review of Ring of Honor's latest pay-per-view that most of you probably maybe didn't even know existed, because, I don't know, there just didn't seem to be the buzz about this show as some of the other shows, so... But, Driven 08, I'm going to call it Driven 08, because calling it Driven when, you know, they didn't call it Driven 2, they just called it Driven, so I'll just call it Driven 08, since it's the 08 edition. You know, again, as always, for $10 what I paid, or $15, depending on how much you paid for it. Not a bad deal at all. Well, let's get started. We started with Austin Aries. I'm in the ring, calling out Jimmy Jacobs. Jimmy Jacobs came out and said they had a title defense as the main event, as they were the tag team champions, and the reason why they wanted to be tag team champions to start with, as far as Age of the Fall, is they wanted to have the power, and then being on the main event showed they had the power. So it was the newest member of the Age of the Fall, Delirious. They kind of tried to explain exactly what was going on as far as the announcers, but they didn't do, I don't think, a good enough job. I think they could have, you know, edited in some video package, kind of explained why Delirious was now a heel. Though he did play a good heel, he did some heelish things. It worked pretty good. It was an okay match. You know, was what it was. I would say 2.5 stars. Next we had Sweet and Sour Inc. come out. They had a plethora of matches. First one was Sara Del Rey versus Jessie McKay. This was a squash of squash proportions, half a star. That's all it really gets. Then we had Brent Albright and Erick Stevens versus Sweet and Sour Inc. of I believe it was Eddie Edwards and Adam Pearce. Brent Albright wanting to get revenge on Adam Pearce. This was, again, I would say an almost good match. This had a lot of good action. It was kind of slow in some parts. Was just more of to develop the storyline a little bit more. 3 3/4. Some good action though, and Albright, you know, was Albright. Stevens was allowed to do what he could do, and all of the guys. So that was pretty good. The whole key to a lot of this was, of course, with the whole Sweet and Sour Inc. thing, was of course, can't even think of his name now because I'm a goof. I'm such a goof. I can't even think of his name. And what are you gonna do? Larry Sweeney. Larry Sweeney. Larry Sweeney, who had really good mic skills, of course. You know, I've heard other people say this. Larry Sweeney is probably, as a character, is far too big for Ring of Honor. It's too bad that neither TNA or WWE really use managers as they should, because he would be perfect. I mean, he's sort of, you know, the illegitimate son of Bobby the Brain Heenan. I think most people would say that. After that, Jerry Lynn came out, challenged Chris Hero, and Jerry Lynn and Chris Hero had a nice little face versus heel match. This was pretty good. This was a good match. This was a good 3-star match. You know, Lynn showed that he still could go. This was probably one of the better Chris Hero matches I've seen in a long time, so that was good to see. Definitely showed me a little something he hadn't for a while, so that was sort of nice. Next we have Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli versus Go Shiozaki. This was all led up to Claudio's kind of heel turn on Bryan Danielson, which they kind of explained. So Danielson and Claudio went right at each other, with Go kind of staying back. Claudio got himself disqualified, something we don't usually see in Ring of Honor. This was an elimination match, so it worked in that extent because we still got a finish, but that's not something you really got to see, and I think it put over even more the fact of Claudio going heel. And so then we got Bryan Danielson versus Go for the rest of the match, which was good for the rest of the match. A good 3.5 star match, I would say, for that. For the rest of it, it didn't go for that much longer, I would say, but it was still a fairly solid match for those two, with some good wrestling, some good hard-hitting strikes, and some nice counter stuff. Then we had definitely the spot fest of the night: Jay and Mark Briscoe versus the Vulture Squad versus the YRR versus Necro Butcher by himself. He was his own team in this. Seems kind of weird. This was exactly what you would spot. Just a good old-fashioned high-impact spot fest, 3 stars, lots of good moves. Basically, just kind of a platform for Jay and Mark to, you know, do their thing for the most part. Then we had the world title match, Nigel McGuiness versus Roderick Strong. This started off really slow, but near the end it really picked up really well. Another 3.5-star match. The fans, you know, because they hate Nigel so much, really bought into the fact of Roderick going over, of Strong going over, even though I think most of them didn't know it. That's one thing I think Nigel doesn't get enough credit for, is the fact that, you know, he's such a prick, and people want him to lose so badly. But when he's in the ring, people start to believe that guys are going to beat him, even though maybe in the back of their minds they know, well, this isn't probably the guy that's going to beat him. So I always am willing to give him credit for that, because I think that's really good, and I think it adds a lot. Then we got our main event of the night, Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black versus Steen and El Generico. This was the main event and match of the night. There's one thing about this card that was really good, is that the card built, with the exception of the scramble match, every match progressively seemed to get better, which you like to see. You got kind of the sense of the main event felt like a main event. It felt like very much like a main event, where the world title match wouldn't have felt like a main event, where the tag team title match, which, you know, in Ring of Honor, the tag team titles they do portray them as prestigious as the world championship, so that kind of works. And so you got to this match. It started off, probably the first 5 minutes were kind of, woo, let's see what we're going to get, especially since I'd heard so much about this match. But once this match got going, it got going in a major way. Lots of just back and forth action. The fans just wanting Steen and Generico to win so bad, and which eventually they did. I usually don't give out spoilers, but I think most people already know the spoilers to this, which they did. Fabulous match. Probably not as good as I had read elsewhere, but still very solid, very good. Maybe a little too late, but definitely the right choice, as the fans went crazy for this. Very nice to see. Overall, another good, solid pay-per-view by Ring of Honor. I give it an 8-0. Again, I don't think a lot of people probably watched this. I think a lot of people probably forgot it was even on, simply because this pay-per-view didn't seem to have the hype or people even talking about it even as much as some of the other pay-per-views, which is, you know, probably isn't a good thing, and goes back to kind of my point about Ring of Honor, is that they need to do more to expose themselves a little more. I like the fact that we are getting video wires weekly, it seems, which is good. It's a good start. I do think they need to be, you know, I could be greedy and say maybe, you know, more than once a week, but I'll go with what I got. I also say that I think just reading over it and seeing people comment on the news wires, which is, you know, Ring of Honor's kind of little news blurbs, which they set out daily. I even think those are doing kind of a better job of getting storylines across and that sort of thing. So for that part, I definitely think that was a good thing. But the pay-per-view, this pay-per-view just didn't seem to have a lot of people just excited about it, as we usually see, particularly since you had a title match and a title win that most people wanted to see to start with. So that's kind of unfortunate on Ring of Honor's fault. But, you know, there's only so much you can do with a pay-per-view. And as I have continually said, and a lot of people continually argue that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I still believe that, you know, I really think that that Final Battle really should be a live pay-per-view. It's too late to do anything about it now, but I really do think it should have been a live pay-per-view, and then you can go back for the rest of the year and do your pay-per-views. But I definitely think that, you know, the company does definitely want to get on television. They understand that they've probably grown as far as they could without being on television, so we'll see how it goes. This isn't necessarily Gabe's swan song, I believe we still have maybe another 4 events before we get the end of Gabe's run as Booker. But this was a very good show as far as the way it was stacked, and the fact that it just built to the main event, which was something that we don't normally see, and something that I always like, because you don't feel as worn out. I didn't feel as worn out as I do during some Ring of Honor shows, where it's just like, oh my god, you know, even for 2 hours you feel like you just watched a 4-hour pay-per-view. So that was definitely good to see. And I also say this too. One thing that whoever did the editing for this one, a big thumbs up, because a lot of the camera angles they got were great, to put it mildly. It was just really good, and it was quite surprising in my opinion, because it really did add to a lot of the drama on the matches. But I just thought I would add that in there. Something that if you do watch it, you can kind of check out. There was a lot of the camera angles were very well done in my opinion, and helped add to the drama of the match, which was nice to see, particularly on a tape pay-per-view, which definitely can do more of that. But anyways, that is all for this one. I am out. Later.